tonight this Saturday, dozens of people are wounded in downtown Tel Aviv. Another suicide bombing, this time at a packed cafe. Israeli troops close in on Yasser Arafat at his West Bank headquarters. Israeli soldiers are just a few feet away.
I am appealing to the whole international world to stop this aggression against our people.
The end of a long and extraordinary life. Britain's Queen Mother is dead. And conquering Everest, the Americans taking on the legendary peak.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight, Saturday.
Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Vargas. Hard as it is to imagine, the situation in the Middle East is even more tense tonight than it was yesterday. Today, Israeli troops closed in on Yasser Arafat's compound in the West Bank. Palestinian officials said Israeli troops were threatening to storm Mr. Arafat's office. There was also another Palestinian suicide attack today, the third this week. ABC's Dean Reynolds reports tonight from Jerusalem. Good evening, Dean.
Good evening, Elizabeth. Well, the cycle of violence here took a number of dangerous turns in just this one day. The Palestinian response to the siege of Ramallah came right in the middle of Tel Aviv. Ambulances lined a busy street near the burning cafe, transporting some of the more than 24 wounded. A militia linked to Yasser Arafat's political wing claimed responsibility, said the attacker came from the city of Nablus on the West Bank. The incident in Tel Aviv came hours after Israeli tanks pulled to within a few feet of Arafat in Ramallah, cornering him and a small group of loyalists in the ruins of his headquarters.
They are declaring that they will continue their military escalation, and they had more and more plans against our people.
In a candlelight interview recorded before the latest bombing, Arafat praised his people and said their resistance would not stop until the Palestinian flag is raised over Jerusalem. Prolonged street battles have been erupting in Ramallah, north of Jerusalem, leaving 11 Palestinians and 2 Israeli soldiers dead in the last 24 hours. In the city center today, a building was set ablaze by Israeli rocket fire after troops were targeted by snipers inside. Hundreds of militants, taking care to show they posed no further threat, were rounded up later and arrested. And the army displayed a large cache of weapons and ammunition it said was seized from the Palestinian compound. Those who've seen him today say the siege is weighing heavily on Arafat.
I am appealing to the whole international world to stop this aggression against our people.
The Israelis insist they will not harm Arafat, but are less clear on other options.
Do you intend to deport him? All Israel has said is at this point, we will isolate him. And that is precisely what we're doing.
Whatever their plans, the Israelis are dealing with a situation that is growing more combustible by the day. Violence broke out in a number of areas outside Ramallah today. There were clashes in Hebron on the West Bank. An Israeli border policeman and 2 Palestinians died in a confrontation in central Israel. In Bethlehem, a march by peace activists demanding an Israeli withdrawal turned ugly. And in northern Israel, the army responded with an artillery barrage to answer a cross-border missile attack by the Lebanese militia Hezbollah. Tonight, the siege in Ramallah continues, and there is no clear sign from Israel that intends to end it anytime soon. Elizabeth?
All right, Dean Reynolds reporting tonight from Jerusalem. Thanks for that report. ABC's Dan Harris is just outside Yasser Arafat's compound in Ramallah, where he's been watching developments all day. He joins us now by telephone. Dan, the Palestinians claim the Israelis have threatened to storm the compound. The Israelis have denied it. Have you sorted anything out?
There were reports from the Palestinians inside the compound, as you mentioned, that the army was threatening via loudspeaker right outside the offices where Arafat is pulled up to storm the place if everybody didn't come out. The Army calls that a fabrication, and as far as we know, there has not been any incursion into those offices. There were reporters that were right outside of that area who said they saw and heard nothing.
All right, Israeli troops have, in fact, however, cut off electricity and water to Arafat's headquarters. We saw a videotape of Arafat speaking earlier today with candlelight and flashlight. Who was in the headquarters right now with Arafat?
He's in there, we're told, with upwards of 100 people, including his top aides and some armed gunmen. Also, Israeli radio is quoting some government sources as saying that the Israelis believe he might be in there with some suspected terrorists who are holed up with him as a means of taking refuge.
Ramallah is normally a bustling city for the PLO, now under a 24-hour curfew. Is there anyone in the streets?
There's nobody in the streets. It's been very quiet. I should say, though, in the last half hour, we're hearing a lot of gunfire near where we are. You also occasionally hear tanks rumbling through the streets. But as you mentioned, this is a normally vibrant, bustling place. The Israelis have imposed a 24-hour rolling curfew, so you don't see anybody in the streets, which is very unusual for Ramallah.
All right, Dan Harris, outside Arafat's headquarters in Ramallah. Thanks for that live report via telephone. At his ranch in Crawford, Texas, President Bush today spoke for the first time about this latest round of violence in the Mideast. ABC's Tamala Edwards is in Crawford tonight. Tamala, the president had some harsh words for PLO Chairman Arafat.
Surprisingly so, Elizabeth. The president spent a great deal of the morning on the phone with world leaders, including Arab leaders like Egypt's Hosni Mubarak and Crown Prince Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. Yet when he came out to speak to reporters this afternoon, he showed very little sympathy for former Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat.
I think that Chairman Arafat can do a lot more. I truly believe that. I believe he needs to stand up and condemn in Arabic these attacks.
As well, the president was very supportive of Israel, saying that it had a right to defend itself. At the same time, he called on Israel to lead what he called an avenue for peace and said he'd been promised that Arafat would not be harmed.
Tamala, the president also warned the countries of Iran and Syria today to get out of the terrorism business, implying somehow that they were involved in these latest attacks.
He was pressed on that and said that he had no evidence that Syria and Iran were connected to these attacks. Yet at the same time, Elizabeth, there's a very important subtext here. You notice when he talked about Arafat, he called on him to speak in Arabic, a reference to the fact that sometimes Arafat says one thing in English and says something far less conciliatory, if not inflammatory, in Arabic. As well, what he was saying to Arab leaders is it's fine for you to support the Saudi peace plan. I need to see that in your own countries, among your own borders, your own people, you're really taking efforts for peace. So in this very tenuous of diplomatic times, some might say that the president looked at the Arab world and said, I'm neither impressed nor satisfied with your efforts.
All right. ABC's Tamala Edwards reporting tonight from Crawford, Texas. In a resolution adopted early this morning, the United Nations Security Council called on Israel to withdraw its troops from Palestinian areas. The 14-0 vote capped an emergency session of the council. The United States voted in favor of the resolution. Israel's most hardline neighbor, Syria, boycotted the vote. There were angry protests throughout the Arab world today. In Lebanon, protesters filled the streets in a show of support for Yasser Arafat. In Iraq, a similar display. Crowds gathered in Libya as well to condemn the Israeli attacks. And here in the U.S., Washington, D.C.'s Freedom Plaza was also filled with demonstrators. In other news overseas, today we learned more about a raid in Pakistan 2 days ago. 5 Taliban fighters and 25 Arabs suspected of having links with Al-Qaeda were captured. The U.S. participated in the operation. ABC's John Yang is in Washington. Actually, not only did the U.S. participate, John, this is the first time the U.S. troops and intelligence officers actually led this type of raid.
That's right, Elizabeth. Until now, U.S. involvement has been limited to training and sharing intelligence. But U.S. and Pakistani officials tell ABC News that for the first time, FBI and CIA agents were actually in the lead. These sources tell us that they broke up what they call a major Al-Qaeda cell that was planning operations and also captured what they call a treasure trove of material, including weapons, laptop computers, and satellite phones.
John, having such strong American involvement is obviously a big step for Pakistani President Musharraf, fraught with political risks for him.
That's right. He's got to be concerned about elements within his own country who don't want the U.S. so involved in Pakistan. And evidence of how sensitive this is, that the Pakistani government is denying that there was any U.S. involvement in these raids. And Elizabeth, here in Washington, the FBI and the CIA will not talk about it at all.
All right. ABC's John Yang, thank you for that live report this evening. In Bagram, Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai visited coalition forces at the airbase for the first time today. The interim prime minister thanked hundreds of soldiers from Australia, Poland, and other countries for helping Afghanistan to free itself. In the Philippines, the bodies of 5 American crewmen were found today. 10 servicemen were lost when a Special Forces helicopter went down February 22nd. A U.S.-led salvage team has now recovered all but 2 of the American servicemen missing since the crash. Still ahead on World News Tonight this Saturday, Britain mourns the Queen Mother, one of the most popular royals in history. The feud between adventurers and environmentalists in the West. And taking on one of the world's most difficult challenges, Everest.
This is World News Tonight, Saturday, brought to you by Viagra.